Alrighty, Alec Torelli, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cole. We were getting into it off camera. Sounds like we have a lot in common. More
Yeah,
than maybe we even know or we've originally thought.
I think that's spot on. I'm excited to dig into it for sure. I wanted to start where my knowingness of you and your existence started, which was a few years ago, back watching live at the bike poker streams. I was curious how you had made it to those streams. Those are some really legendary games that went on, some really fun battles between some really high level poker players. I'm curious about your journey up to that point and then what that whole arena was like at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started playing Live at the Bike pretty early on when they were first getting going, like 2015. I guess I'm just
Mhm.
telling you the years all blend together. Been in poker 20 years now, so it's like a lot. Yeah, the years kind of go by. But yeah, like before that, I was living. I mean, I traveled to play poker for a number of years and played some the big tournaments around the world, and lived in Vegas. But I was living in Macau before that, from like 2012 to 2015,
Mhm.
2016. So when I left Macau, I started spending more time, going back to the US. And one of the things that was really picking up at the time were these live stream games. Like Poker Night in America was kind of taking off, and Live at the Bike. This was before the Hustler, before every other casino had their own live stream. This was kind of like they were like the big couple ones. There was the Party Poker big game out in Europe as well. And I think the high stakes circle was smaller at that time, and it was a little bit more intimate, and there was less, vlogging, there was less YouTube, there was less social media, TikTok wasn't around. So it was like fewer people were like actually making content. I was also starting to make a lot of content at the time. So I had some like success playing poker and writing about poker and coaching. But then I was also making content on YouTube in 2013. I started a show called The Hand of the Day, which was like one of the very first, if not the first, like hand review shows on YouTube where like I would play a hand of poker in Macau and I would just share my thoughts on it and I would break it
Mhm.
down. And so these kind of caught on too. So it was like kind of the combination of these things was accumulating at a time where I was creating a lot of content, and I knew also the people that ran Live at the Bike as well, and also like some people at the Party Poker Big Game and Poker Night in America. So I was able to kind of make a circle around and play on a lot of these live streams. And it was unique at the time because there was like more
Yeah.
concentration of attention around a fewer number of streams. So it was much more like of an event. There was much more scarcity around high stakes poker action at the time. And so um, it had a different feel to it, I think, at that time. But it was really cool to battle against some of the best players. Not always cool when they beat you because they're tough, but
Right.
it was fun.
Yeah, that comes with the territory. And I even remember I'm not sure when it really started to tail off, but it was 2019, 2020, 2021 when I was really getting into it. And still at that point, it was one of the main cash games, high stakes cash games that was running. And I
Yeah.
feel like that helped sprout the whole thing. And I'm sure COVID played into it as well. But I'm curious how you got into poker in the first place. I believe you dropped out of college as a freshman to go pursue playing poker professionally. What was it before that? Like, what was your first moment into the poker world, and then what caught your fancy there and led to you diving deeper?
Chris Moneymaker just won the main event of the World Series of
Yeah,
Poker in 2003. And I was 16 at the time. And I was in high school. I was a junior going into my junior year when that was on TV. And so poker became very cool overnight. Like that poker boom moment, there was like a catalyst to that moment. And it was airing that event and that whole World Series of Poker on ESPN around that summer. And I also was at a very impressionable time. I was not very good at sports. I
hmm,
didn't make my freshman basketball team. I dropped out of football my freshman year. I was in like musical theater, so I wasn't like, like I wasn't a jock. Like I wasn't able to like compete and win at anything, but I'm very like competitive. Like I love trying to win it at games. I also sucked at chess. So I got invited to a friend's house to
hmm.
play poker, and I won my first time playing. But I also felt, I mean, there was a lot of luck. I was very bad. I didn't
You're
even
right.
know that the ace of spades was not better than the ace of hearts. Like I was very bad at poker. But I also felt like, hey, this game is something that I could win at. Maybe it was luck. Maybe I felt like I had an affinity for it. But that really captivated me at a time that was like very impressionable. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I played a lot during high school, like after school with friends. I would play online. We would like go sneak into casinos. Grew up in Southern California, so there were a lot of Indian reservation casinos around me.
Hmm.
And poker was really cool at the time. Like everyone was playing, it was exploding, it was like in the zeitgeist, like people were talking about it, whatever. And so when I got to college, I was 18, I was at SMU, and I was like pretty serious about poker at that time. Like given that I was young and whatever, I'd been playing for 2 years. It's basically all I thought about and did in every free hour I had since I discovered it. And I kind of say, I mean, I saved up, I don't know, 20, 30 grand. And I realized like I either have to, a couple months into my freshman year, I'm like skipping economics class because it's 8 a.m. on a Monday and the tournaments online go till like 4 a.m. Sunday
Hmm.
night. So like I can't make that equation work. And I'm like, look, I either have to quit poker and focus on school or quit school and focus on poker, but I can't like be half one foot in and out the door of both. So I did like a risk reward calculation, kind of like you do when you play a hand of poker. Like, what are my
Yeah.
odds? Like, how much am I risking? What is the reward? What's the upside? What's the downside? And I just realized, like, if I quit school and focus on poker and I fail, like I lose all my money, which, I'm 18 and or 19, I'll be 19 and broke, but everyone else is 19 and broke too, right? So like I'm going to be
Hmm.
1 year behind everybody else in this like path of trajectory towards school. But if I make it, like if I run the 20K up or, I pursue my dream of traveling the world playing professionally and see where that sort of other path in the road leads me, like the upside is massive. Like I could have this incredible adventure of pursuing what was my dream at the time. And so I kind of took that leap, but I think calculating that risk reward sort of helped me think about it and bring it down to size and something I was more comfortable with. And that kind of gave me the at bat and the catalyst to like take a step toward a life of unconventional life and pursuing something that I, was my dream at the time and I guess still is to this day.
Yeah. Totally understandable. And TLDR, you made it. It's also you made it, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. What was the what was that leap of faith like? What was it like communicating with your parents and those around you and dropping out of school? Because there comes with a certain, balancing of that pendulum of like, oh, Alex dropping out. And there's perhaps a little bit of attention on you there. And what was the communication process like and the internal feelings in that whole time period during that shift?
Yeah, it was tough. I think the hard part, and I can imagine this would be the hard part for other people in a similar spot pursuing an esoteric adventure, is like
Mhm.
I guess you would think like, hey, I'm building up this idea in my head and I have these dreams and like, I want to do this kind of crazy thing. Like it could be anything. It doesn't have to be poker. It could be like, hey, I want to, quit my job and start a company and I'm going to do
Yeah.
this thing and it's going to be amazing. And it doesn't mean you have to be foolish, but like I realized that taking a step of doing something off the beaten path is not typically met with a lot of encouragement. And I don't think that people like want to pull you down necessarily. It's not like a, conspiracy or whatever, but it's just like, uh, people are generally risk adverse. And also like, poker was also very esoteric at the time. It wasn't in the mainstream consciousness at all. So maybe it was like harder
Hmm.
to kind of understand and get on board between poker specifically. But yeah, basically no one told me that this was a good idea. So I told, I don't know, like friends of mine in my dorm, my college campus, friends of mine from back home that played poker. They were a little bit more like, whatever. But yeah, like a girl I was seeing at school, my college counselor, like everyone basically told me that I was kind of crazy and this was like a very bad idea. Obviously they're a little diplomatic, a little nice about it, but yeah, there wasn't much like encouragement. So I kind of got to a point where I realized like, it's kind of like in poker, like when you're sitting at the table and you're playing, you can't phone a friend and ask them how to play the hand. And so like
Right.
I
Yeah.
realized like, look, only you could play your hand. Like you have to decide it's your money. Sometimes you go all in and lose, sometimes you go all in and you're right. But ultimately, like I've made money in poker by trusting myself. Like when I think I have a winning hand and I'm willing to bet all my chips, I'm usually right. And sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm usually right. And I just knew that like the opinion I had of what I wanted for my life had to be more important to me than the sum of everyone else's opinion around me. And it's not because I'm like arrogant or I knew what was best or I didn't value anyone else's
Mhm.
opinion, but it's like, this is my hand, like it's not anyone else's hand. They all get to play their hand. And it's like, I'm not going to tell you how to play your hand. If you want to play your hand that way, great. It's your money. You do what you want with your money, right? That's your hand. So for me, it was just like, you know what? This is my hand to play. And like, I'm not going to get validation or like, nobody else could play it for me. I'm not going to get the decision
Right.
handed to me on a silver platter, especially when I'm doing something off the beaten path. And that's sort of the asymmetry. Like the asymmetry of doing something very unique is that if it all goes well, you have a very high upside. Like I have a very high upside with where my life has went. But I also had a downside that,
Yeah.
came with a lot of risk such that my idea was non-consensus. obviously we know we both are into Bitcoin. Like you make money by taking a non-consensus view and being right. But it's very
Yeah.
hard to take that non-consensus view because it's not in vogue. When it's in vogue, there's not a lot of upside. The price is already baked in. Like everybody already adopts Bitcoin. When Bitcoin becomes a global standard and like the medium of account and the unit of exchange between every transaction in the world, it's not going to go up 30% a year, 50% a year. Like
Mhm.
it's just like that with everything in life. And um, yeah, it was hard, but I remember the feeling like of deciding that I was doing it and I wasn't going back, and like that commitment that I made to drop out of school and play poker was like I still remember this is like one of the most peak feelings I had in my life. I just felt this overwhelming sense of freedom that like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I could get up tomorrow and do whatever I want. And like, yes, I have to make it work. I can't just like get wasted and party all day. Like I do have to like support myself and make money, but like I could control how I spend my time. And I just felt that unbelievable sense of freedom, almost like how you feel when school is out in high school and it's summer vacation and you have like 3 months off
Yep.
and you're just like that feeling. I had that for like my whole life future. And I just was like, I'm going to do everything I can to always have this feeling. Because to me, that was like, that was worth a lot. That was kind of very addicting.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right there with you. I've compared it before to the feeling of getting off the school bus, on the first day of summer, last day of school. It's like the utter pure freedom to just go out and explore and not be weighed down by all of these external things that you don't actually have interest in. It was a
Yeah.
very similar feeling for me my first couple of days into my first weeks in Florida, living by myself as an 18-year-old playing poker. It was like this taste of freedom. There's no way I was plugging back in. And there was things that happened and it could have potentially gone that way in terms of me getting back into the system if it quote unquote failed, but it didn't. And I think the poker analogy is spot on, is that we each have our own hand to play and we each have our own equation. And it's kind of our duty to realize that and to calibrate to our own equation and trust ourselves in that process and and also do the work to become self-aware of what our equation is and what cards we've been dealt and what hand we're really playing. So I'm curious,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a really good point. Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah,
That's a hard unlock, at least, for me, like when you're young, it's like harder to, as you mature, you become more self-aware, you become more aware of what you're good at and where you can create value, how you can help others in the world, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, where you're
yep.
willing to compromise, where you're not, like what things you value to spend your money and your time on. And yeah, it's all like a self-discovery process, but I think that is the equation. You're not always going to get it right, but trying to optimize for that is really the game.
Yeah, and swinging and missing is part of the process. It's part of the learning experience, and I think self-awareness is huge. It's such a skill that it's hard to have anybody else teach you because it's self-awareness. It's a self-led journey mostly, and there's other people that are involved in it, but yeah, it's a self-led sovereign journey.
Yeah,
And I remember
definitely.
thinking that 18 or 19, a year or so into my experiment outside of the system, was like self-awareness is massive, and being able to understand, okay, I made an action, but what happened as a result? What can I learn from it? What can I do different next time? And constantly building and stacking that knowledge on top of itself is a huge way to continue stacking self-discovery and calibrating yourself to your equation. So you make the leap at 18 as a freshman.
Yeah.
And where did you move to? And what, it was just poker 5, 6, 7 days a week, pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, I was at SMU in Dallas, Texas.
Hmm.
I sort of rounded up like my stuff and like figured out what my next move was. I stayed in school for not like in school, I stayed like at my dorm and I would play poker like in, underground clubs or online. And I kind of stayed there for a little while, but then it very quickly got like incompatible in the sense that like I was no longer like pursuing going to like the parties where everyone was like going to, trying to get into a fraternity. And like my friends were kind of like gradually shifting or like rapidly shifting towards like different cliques and groups. And I was not part of like the social structure. And like I also had like different hours than people. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to Southern California because that's where I was from. Like I have to come across this bridge where I tell my parents, right? Like I had told, um, some friends of mine around me and like, people in my dorm and like whatever, some people I played poker with and my college counselor. But I was like, okay, I have to face, the music. I got to tell my parents and like, I got to go back to California. But I remember before I went back to California, I like I flew into Orange County and, my friends picked me up from the airport and then we like drove to the casino and I like went on a like bender and I stayed at the casino like as long as I could because like I didn't want to like
Yeah, you
I
like
didn't
the
I like
crown.
resisted to like go home. Um, yeah, and I did well. I like stayed at the casino. I kind of like stayed as long as I could, but eventually they're like, I'm burnt out. I'm like living in a casino. So I went home. I told my parents. They were actually like very supportive. My parents have always been like really supportive, which was a relief, and it's great. And I also think they saw that I was like very serious about it, and like I had like a plan. I was like, look, if I fail, I'm going to give it a year. This is like a a sabbatical year, like a trial run. I mean, people in Europe. I mean, this is kind of a foreign concept in America, but like it's very common in Europe to take a year off between 18 and 19 and like go travel or live in a hostel or backpack and like whatever. So, it's sort of like a cultural thing more than
Hmm.
more than a real thing. Anyway, they were super supportive. I had a plan. I was like, looking to take a year off. I'm going to, do this, this, and that. And I couldn't really play poker in the US. Like I was playing online, but again, like even in Orange County, my
Yeah.
friends are in school, they're getting jobs, they're going to college. A lot of them moved away. So I get even coming back there felt like a little bit awkward. I was like living at home and I was like, okay. So I kind of rounded up a friend of mine that I was playing online poker with at the time and another guy who also dropped out of school to play poker. It's like the only other guy I knew that did that. And we went to Australia because there was a major tournament there called the Aussie Millions. And this was like a huge tournament at the time. And it was in January and it was getting winter in California and it was summer there. And my dream was basically to like travel, make enough money playing poker to pay for my travels. And that was it. Like I wasn't trying to run up a bag. There was no crypto. I wasn't trying to like, run it up or do anything. I was just like, I want to live this life where I could like, I saw poker on TV and people were like playing final tables in Aruba and shit. And I was just like, I just want to go see different places and like have fun and travel. And like, if poker pays for it, great. If I can eat a nice meal, great. If I could just like survive, that's like all I really care about. So we went to Australia and I went with some guy I'd never met before. He met us. This was before Airbnb. Somehow we found a place online. I think we called like a travel service. So he met us at an apartment, and I literally gave him a photo of me that I printed out, and he just like showed up at the door. And I never met this guy in my life. And another guy was a friend of mine that I was like hanging out with in Orange County. So the three of us like lived together in Australia for a while. And I played the Aussie Millions, and I played online there, and had a time of my life. And I won the biggest tournament in online history while I was living there. So it was like
Wow.
yeah, I don't know, it was like a $500 buy-in. It was like over a quarter million for first. And that was like
Wow.
completely life-changing. I'm like 18 years old
Yeah.
and I win and I get put on the poker map.
Mm.
There was like a major tournament on the biggest site called Full Tilt Poker at the time. And yeah, while I was living in Australia, I ran it up. Like I became the ninth biggest winner in the world in cash games that year in 2007. And so the tournament combined with the cash games like really put me on the map and kind of accelerated me to uh, the top of the poker scene. It did all come crashing down. I let ego and like you said, self-awareness is a thing that you kind of it's hard to learn. So I had to learn that the hard way and learn to be humble and got my ass handed to me and round tripped the whole thing and had to build back up from the bottom when I was like 20, 21. And so yeah, like I round tripped $1 million at 20 years old and started over and moved to Vegas when I was 21 and like I just had a long trajectory. I'm 38 now, so it's been a number of years. But yeah, poker's teaches you a lot of life lessons like and if you have
Yeah.
ego, have you make mistakes or you have like a weakness or a flaw, like it's going to be exposed through immediate feedback with losing money. And so you kind of
Yeah.
learn things pretty quickly or you're just going to get completely nuked.
Yeah. It's extremely humbling, like over and over again. It's a never ending truth either. It would take me through that
Yeah, it
first
is true.
tournament of because you make it deep in that tournament. I'm sure there's a ton of entries. And
Yeah.
what's the internal feeling like, okay, I'm getting towards the later stages of this tournament, and then you make it to the final table and you're sitting
Yeah.
there and then your head's up all of a sudden and then you bank the win.
Right.
What's that whole experience and feeling and euphoria like?
I mean, it was wild. I had this feeling like I should play this tournament, and I
Hmm.
was mainly a cash game player. I was already playing decent stakes at the time. I was playing like 10, 20, no limit, with like a 2K buy-in. So those like pretty decent stakes, especially back in 2007. Um, and so I like ran it up a decent bit playing. And I was mainly a cash game player. Like I was always playing cash. But I had a feeling like there was this like big tournament on Full Tilt, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get up and play it. It started at like 3:30 a.m. because it's like meant to be on US time. It's like 3, 4 a.m. I had to get up in Australia and play it. But the upside of that is like as we got later and later in the day, like it wasn't 2, 3, 4 in the morning for me, like I was used to doing when I was like at SMU, where I'd have to stay up to like 3, 4, 5 in the morning to play. It was like
Yep.
7 p.m. when I made the final table. So I'm like fresh, I'm ready to go, I'm like focused. Um, I was living with this guy at the time that we like, got a place. We were staying in Australia, and yeah, it happened so fast, but I was really a lot of times, like even since then, like in poker, sometimes you make a deep run or you get deep in a tournament or there's like a high pressure situation. And sometimes for whatever reason, there's like, a lot of external factors, or sometimes you're in your own head or whatever. Like you're sort of feeling the pressure and the energy around you such that um it becomes like a little bit of a psychological barrier to perform at a high level when like, other people are watching or you're on a live stream or there's like a lot of money at stake. But for some reason,
Hmm.
I was incredibly relaxed that whole day. And it was really weird because this was like completely life-changing money. It wasn't like, I was playing a tournament
Right.
first place money that was the same as a buy-in. Like this was completely life-changing. But I really never thought about the money. I didn't really look at the payouts. I wasn't trying to min cash or like grind it up. I was just like having fun playing, and I stayed in this really like flow state, lighthearted energy. And it's for some reason I never really thought about any of that. I just kind of stayed present with the poker. And I wouldn't have been able to win if that didn't happen. In fact, I've had many times in my career where I've had the opposite, where like I grip too tightly and I try too hard. And ironically, that leads to much worse performance. And I'm almost like, it's almost like a self-sabotage thing, or not necessarily like in a bad way, but it's like you're your own worst enemy, you know? And so like
Yep.
I've cost myself tournament victories or potentially deeper runs or lots of money in cash games or whatever. But I was able to like kind of stay in this state. And when I do that in poker, I'm sure you could relate, like really, really good things happen and you're able
Yeah.
to just kind of like float above it and win. And other times you don't have it, or you're in your own head, or the ego gets in the way or whatever, and just everything blows up. And so yeah, I remember winning those like incredible feeling. It doesn't hit you immediately because it's like so like, it's so much relative to what I had so quickly. One thing that did become apparent right away is I started moving up to bigger stakes. So that's why I
Right.
was able to be top 10 winner on full tilt, because like I had 250K, and so I moved up to 2550 basically overnight. And apparently I was good enough to win. I just didn't have the bankroll to win. And also like, you know how it is, like when you're winning it begets more winning because you're playing well, you're
Yeah.
like elevated. So I won a tournament, so obviously I was going to play really well when I moved up because I was like, oh, I'm the best, I'm top of the world, and so it was easy to play well and kind of run it up. But obviously that came to bit me in the ass when I got humbled and handed it to me, and lost a lot of it back.
You mentioned your internal state in terms of like assigning importance to the money or the prize or trying to min cash, which a lot of people I feel like play tournaments, and this has happened with me in the past. You get into a tournament and you're in the money where you're right there on the bubble and you start playing tighter,
Yeah.
and it actually leaves a lot of room for exploitation, which often happens by high level poker players. And I think, as you stated, that when you just play the game and you're playing it because you enjoy it and you're playing it to maximize the enjoyment of poker in the sense of stacking as many chips as possible and playing as well as you can just for the sake of doing that rather than, oh, I want to win a bunch of money, you
Yeah.
play a lot better. And you use the term float, but I was thinking of this book, Reality Transurfing. I'm not sure if you read it, but they talk about these pendulums that can form where, let's say, if you enter a poker tournament and you assign a lot of importance to winning, or you get to a final table and you start feeling a lot of pressure because you assigned a lot of charge to that situation, there's like a balancing act energetically to where your performance may falter, you may yeah, cave under pressure, whatever it is that you've built up, but it's all basically your belief and view of it and your
Yeah, it makes
assigning of
total sense.
importance to the situation. Yeah.
That's been my complete experience. I've studied, worked with mental coaches and studied like these sort of various things about your state, your internal state, and your balance, your energy, and that sort of thing. And so like this has definitely been my experience as well. Like the more you grip and the more you want and you need something, like the more that thing evades you, and the harder it is to like have that thing. And the more that it's like so ironic because
Yeah.
people say like, oh, the purpose of poker is to like make money. But like when you focus on making money playing poker, you actually like the money evades you because like you're not focused on the decision, you're not focused on the process, you're not focused on being creative or the art
Hmm.
of the hand or the moment. You're so gripping the outcome that you end up playing worse trying to get that thing. Whereas like if in poker, it's been my experience, like if I just focus on doing my job correctly, which is like making really good decisions and just like thinking about the hand and being creative and being in the moment and staying present and just like how do I play the hand the best way possible, ironically that leads to making a lot of money, but like making money is the
Right.
byproduct of doing your job correctly. But I've had many times in my life where I've lost, you lost sight of the prize, and like especially as I move up or I play bigger games, and then you go on a downswing, and then you like start gripping what you're losing, right? Because you run up a bag and then you lose it. You're like, then you start to think about the money because the money is being taken away from you. So you kind of grip onto what you're losing, and then you stop trying to play poker well because you're like just so focused on getting the money back. And then of course that that spiral kind of leads downward. So the times that I've been able to like shift and just keep my focus and my intention and my presence on just like I want to play poker today because I want to play for the expression of the game and my talent and the
Yeah.
art and like the joy of trying to
Yep.
be creative and stay present and like view this as like an 8 hour flow state meditation where I'm like in the zone, I'm locked in, I'm playing poker. Of course, those times I make a lot of money on average. But when I go with the wrong intention, it bites me in the ass. So I try and stay like aligned more when I'm playing poker nowadays, and then like let the results handle themselves and not really grip too hard or have any expectations or worry about that, and just like try and regulate my internal state and then just like trust that everything else will be in balance and aligned, kind of like you said.
Yeah, I love the term the art because I think everything really is an art. And I think the art of playing poker is a really beautiful art. And I like how you described it as a flow state meditation and being intentional about it because you can really get into a meditative state playing at a poker table. Like the chips, you hear the chips shuffling and bouncing around the casino and the flow of cards and everything. And it's actually, I think it's a really beautiful flow of energy, honestly. And when you really tap into that and become present with it, you can really tap into some awesome states, and your thinking just gets so locked in, and it just comes naturally. And I
I
think
think it's
that's
it's
that's
almost
when you
like
play
it's
your
almost a
best.
perfect game. I can't really think of
Yeah,
anything else that allows you to get in that state because people say like, "Oh, I get in that state when I go on runs and whatever," and I'm just like completely locked in. And yeah, I get that way too when I'm working out or I'm swimming or I'm running or whatever, and like you're just kind of in the zone, or you yoga or meditation. Like all those things are great, and they're all amazing, but like they're very concentrated and they're very much like a sprint, and you're doing those things for like 30 minutes or an hour. Other times when you're working, sure you can get in that state, but it's like poker has this very perfect balance of of a relaxed activity, but that
yeah,
also requires focus. So it's very much like a soft focus. Like you're not in you're the way poker works is like there's 9 people at the table, there's only 2 people in a hand. So you're only playing about 15-20% of your hands. I'll say 20%. So 80% of the time you're not involved in the pot. And so you have no emotional connection to the outcome, but you're still sort of incentivized to softly pay attention because you want to gather the incomplete information around you to use it to make better decisions. But you can do that pretty easily, pretty passively. It's almost like driving, except none of the stress or nuance. It's just like that soft
yeah,
focus where you could kind of do it on autopilot, but you do have to pay attention. So like you're forced to be basically locked in. And poker's also a game where like you very rarely play for less than 4 hours. Like you're not really going to go to the casino
hmm,
and drive and put on clothes and put on a wait on a wait list and deal with winning and losing money if you're not going to get a 4 hour session in. But it's common to play for 8 or 10. And so
hmm,
tournaments last 12 to 14 and play the World Series, or whatever. So it's like you're kind of just forced to sit there and just be locked in all day. You kind of have nothing else to do. You can't really leave the table. You can't go anywhere. It's not like a run where you can stop running or like you're only going to run for 30 minutes. Like, so you just kind of get in this habit of like being locked in for like 12 hours at a time. And in fact, a lot of clients I work with, a lot of people that are amateurs or recreational players, um, not in a bad way as escapism, but they go to the poker table because like they also go in times of challenging times because like it's the one place they can get away where it's like they can just it's like going to the mountains, like, for your life.
right, yeah,
Unplug from the craziness and you have 12 hours where you can just sit there and be locked in. And there's not many other activities where you can do that for that amount of time.
yeah,
It's truly incredible. Like it is very therapeutic. Like, I mean, obviously it comes with baggage because like if you lose money or you get caught up or you have ego, like there's a lot of stimulation and challenges, but that's also part of the meditative state. Like if you meditate for a long
yeah.
time, you deal with a lot of emotions as well. So like observing your emotions without getting attached to them is like basically like a basic standard of how to like think through life and kind of like a heuristic for meditation. So like poker challenges that with stimulation, but it is really good as a game, as a practice to like to play. It's just like it's a very unique thing. And I really don't think anything else is like it that I've experienced.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it honestly is the perfect game. And I've always viewed it as a game to varying degrees, but even a couple of months ago, I was playing poker in Austin and I moved back to Jacksonville, and eventually I just like I really tapped into like the deepest truth that it is a game, and then I tapped into my enjoyment of the game and how beautiful the game is to me and how much I enjoy the art of playing poker. And because I love games of all varieties. Like, if there's a game going on, sport, I love competing, like sign me up.
Yeah,
And the
that's awesome.
actual game of poker is just so stimulating, and it's that perfect balance. There's that, chart or graph, whatever you want to call it, of like challenging and boring. And it's not overly challenging or overly boring. It's that perfect sweet spot right in the middle where you can just be stimulated, but you're not playing 100% of the time, so you don't get drained, but you are playing, with other people, and there's a social aspect to it. I like playing in person for that reason, but
Yeah.
it's
And anyone
so
could
so
win. So
stimulating.
like the challenging side,
Yeah.
like you said, it's really, I haven't heard it expressed that way. That's a really good observation you made. But it is that it's always interesting and it's always challenging, but you always have hope. So you're never out of the game.
Yeah. I love that. I was curious
That's
because
cool.
you're 18, 19, 20,
Yeah.
and then you're in Australia. I heard you moved to Las Vegas at 21. You play in the
Yeah.
World Series of Poker heads up event. You finished second in that, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about that experience, but also curious to hear about how you round tripped the million, and some pitfalls that you ran into and what you learned as a young adult,
Yeah.
probably thinking that you're invincible on top of the world, which is some of my experience. And then that came with a loss of money, but that ended up, launching me off to the next chapter of my life, and it ended up being for the better ultimately. I mean, I'm curious what your experience with that is.
Yeah, it was very hard to go through, but a lot of times, the hardest things are the biggest lessons. And so, like,
Yeah.
we have a saying in poker, you don't really learn anything when you win. And so, like, people, it's funny because I coach poker now, but it's like you're kind of like a doctor. Like, nobody goes to you when you're healthy. And so, like, nobody, like, people come to me when they're winning, but usually it's like, hey, I was winning and then I had a really bad session and now I need to get better, right? So, loss really, sort of like bifurcates into two different directions. You either quit the mission, you abort the mission, you're just like, this game is terrible, like I lost too much, or I can't handle it, like it's not for me, or you kind of have to like build yourself back up stronger, and like you have to level up your character to play a different level, right? So like you're kind of like, hey, you didn't, you didn't beat the end boss. Now you have to start the game back over and get back to the end boss. But the second time you get to the end boss, you usually win because you know how the guy plays, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be a better character. So poker's a lot
Mhm.
like that. So like I was on top of the world in my own head at least, and I was like, based on these like sort of metrics that people measure, like, the win rate and the tournament wins or the whatever. So that got to my head and I stopped doing the things that got me there. I stopped focusing on the process, the journey, the love, the joy. I had to like keep playing to like keep this image of, being a high stakes player or playing a certain amount or winning a certain amount or proving that I was good enough or sitting with the best in all the big games, and stop studying because I was too good. And like, all of those things that I got completely, my ass completely handed to me. And so I did lose a lot of that back when I was like 20. And I went from playing games where the buy-in was like 40,000 to like games where the buy-in was like 1,000. So like one
Mhm.
raise pre-flop was a buy-in in my other game, just kind of like
Yeah.
mentally picture that distinction. So it was very hard to like do that. I had to like completely just, lay all my cards on the table, like completely be humbled. I'm moving down in stakes. I'm like restarting from the bottom. I had to like, maybe like tell, oh man, my friends all knew this and stuff like that. I was telling them about hands, but hands were super small. I wasn't like competing in the high stakes games anymore. But one thing that I did realize, like you said, like you kind of come back stronger, is I realized that I wasn't really playing for like the money. I was like gripping the money as I was losing. And like when I was making a lot, I was like, you kind of get caught. It's easy to get caught up with it. But I was like, I actually want to climb this mountain again. And like, I want to play the game. Like, I want to play poker. Like, I love poker. I want to win at poker, but like, I still want to play, even though now I lost all the money. So like,
Hmm.
I just actually love the process of playing poker. I don't really care that much about the outcome. And so like, I got re-energized in a way that I was like more fired up than before because I was like, now I can't fucking lose because they can't beat me out of the money because I don't even give a fuck. I just want to win. I'm playing for the right reason. So like, I'm going to do all the things that I need to do to get better, to win and beat these guys because like I'm playing from a purity standpoint because I love the game. And so like, I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, okay, like this was a test and this was like kind of like a brick wall, and to decide how bad I really wanted it. Do you going to like see the brick wall and turn around, or are you going to like figure out a way to climb over it? So I started like, it took me a while, but I like put my, pieced myself back together and like started grinding at, whatever, 510 or whatever it was, and like moved my way back up. So when I got to Vegas, I moved, back out there at 21. And yeah, I had some results in tournaments. I was, able to play bigger cash games at the time. When I was 24, I moved to Macau, and there was, the gaming revenue there is 7 times bigger than Vegas. So it was like some of the biggest poker boom like that happened in the US also happened in Macau between those years, 2012 to 2016. And so now, like on my second mountain, like the second time I moved out to Macau, I was 24. I lived there from 24 to 28, but I already had 6 years of experience being a pro. So I was very young, and I had all the energy and excitement and the drive and the motivation to like play 24-hour, 40-hour sessions in Macau, but I had the experience and the maturity to like, this was my second time climbing the mountain. So I was competing
Yeah.
against a lot of people whose first time it was, but I had a little bit of the perspective and a little bit more of the maturity and, the skill and the discipline and, the grit and like the experience to like do it in a better, more mature, sustainable way. And I also was way more like grounded and humbled because I realized like it's very hard to climb the mountain. It's very easy to go down. It's just like it's
Yeah.
really easy to gain weight. It's very hard to lose weight. It's really easy to lose money in crypto. It's very hard to make money. You can get rugged
Hmm.
for everything in a day, but it could take you a year, 2 years, or 5 years to run up a bag. So it's like there's so many, there's I had like a lot more reverence and respect for the process and the game of poker. Like the game of poker was like a fire. It could heat or burn. So I had a lot of respect for the fire.
Hmm.
And I was also like, I tried to now even like to this day, I always think like there's more that I don't know than what I do know. There's always people that do things better than me. Even if I think I have an edge over that player, there's certain things that they do very well. And I always have to be mindful of everyone's strengths while being aware of their weaknesses and like, take I could always, there's always something I could learn. And I always try and like improve after every session because I know that like if I ever get comfortable or complacent or
Yeah.
high on my own shit, like it's all going to get taken away and it can all happen very fast. And so I learned those lessons and it built me up, a lot stronger. Like it's like one of the best things to ever happen, even though it was one of the hardest
Yeah.
things to ever happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and I'm
feel
lucky
it.
that it happened young. Like I'm really lucky that happened
Yeah.
at 20 when there was less in my life that would affect me in a way that I couldn't try again. If it
Right.
happens at
If you had,
40, it's a lot harder to start over.
yeah, you've got a mortgage or kids or family, wives and other people that you're responsible for. The risk curve is just much different at that point. And I feel the
Yeah.
same way. Like it was arguably the biggest mistake I ever made was investing in this crypto Ponzi scheme, Olympus Dow, and I put
Oh
a
yeah, I
good
know.
chunk
I
of
remember.
change in
Yeah.
it, 3-3, and these ridiculous APY numbers. And I was, it was 2021, I was 19, and I was just making money because I was in crypto during this catastrophic, catastrophically, not even catastrophically, it's like this just huge boon of money flowing into this market, and I was a 19-year-old beginner in the mix of it, and so I thought I was invincible, and I threw some money at
Yeah.
this thing and ended up losing most of it, pretty much 2 to 3 months. But that was the catalyst for me, much like you, of like returning to almost this foundational level of like
Yeah.
getting tested to see actually what I was made of, or my interest or curiosity and drive to understand the space was really made of. And that's what led me to Bitcoin, which was the greatest thing I could have learned and gotten out of that whole thing. But it was because of that mistake, which I think is fascinating. It's a microcosm of life in general too.
Yeah, I mean it's every Bitcoiner is a former altcoiner, right? So you
Right.
start at Bitcoin, you go to altcoins and you come back to Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean it's I almost think like there's almost like a rite of passage where you kind of have to in almost any industry, like you almost have to like you almost there's almost like an inevitability of like blowing it up the first time. Like it's really
Yeah.
hard, even in like I see in poker, like you hear those stories occasionally, like, oh, I deposited $50 and I only deposited once, and you think that that's like the model, but like that's just the one story you heard, and the reason you heard that story is because like it never fucking happens. Like
Right.
everyone busts the first roll or whatever. Like I'm not, so it's like even the people that make it I think have a round trip story of some kind or like a moment where they're tested. Like it's just like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just like it's even like, with like the cycles of crypto or whatever, like people like it just nothing goes up in a straight line. Like you never catch the moment and then it all goes up and you sail off into the sunset. Like that's just not the way it works. There's always going to be, especially you study the energy and the pendulum thing. Like the universe is always going to test how bad you actually want something versus like how bad you say you want it. And if the words you say and the things you think and the intention you have is actually going to be mirrored. And so like that moment, like I watched a really interesting talk at the time called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. This talk like actually like kind of changed my life in a way.
Hmm.
Because it came out right at a time where this guy he was diagnosed, he gave a lecture called The Last Lecture. And he's like, what would be the last lecture you would ever give before you die? And then he actually got terminal cancer, terminal disease, and passed away. So like this thing became like viral before there was like social media. And
Wow.
the lecture is absolutely incredible. And it's, of course, incredibly tragic that the guy passed away. But it was like, it became like an unbelievable thing that he gave a last lecture and then passed away. And then the lecture became like this timeless piece of advice. And he basically says, like, hey, brick walls are not there to keep you out. They're there to keep the other people out. And they're there to test how bad you actually want that thing. And so like that perspective, like really like I kind of like felt and internalized that perspective at the bottom when I came back yeah, like you said, it's like coming back to base. You come back to base camp
Hmm.
and it's like, okay, I'm at base camp. I could either go down the mountain and go back to society in the path, or I like look back up the mountain. I'm like, all right, I got to go back up the mountain. And so like realizing that was like a perspective shift I had at base camp. I was like, oh, this is that brick wall, and I have to decide how bad I really want it. And it's like, do I want it? And there's no right answer. I think I'm not like saying
Right.
that like, wanting it bad enough is right. I have many instances in life where I didn't want it bad enough. When I moved to Italy, I was 24. I wanted to learn piano. My dream was to learn piano and to ride a motorcycle. That was like my bucket list item of like moving to Italy.
Hmm.
I did both of those things. I rode the motorcycle once and never practiced piano. I like
Okay.
strongly disliked both of those things. The brick wall was there. I didn't want it. I was just like, this is completely not me, and it was like a disaster. So like there's a lot of times where you go against the brick wall, but with poker for me and with like learning and investing in poker and stuff for you, it's like it's it's uh it's an interesting time. It's like an interesting moment in life because like if you approach it with that curiosity and that test of things, I think it made it a lot easier to kind of like handle it and like feel less stress about it and feel like I got really invigorated in that moment because I was like, oh my God, I want it. And like knowing that
Yeah.
I kind of passed the test of like I want it, but I want it because I want it, not because of the external shit. It was a really cool feeling.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Again, I think rite of passage is a really good way of looking at it. And it's like the brick walls are there, just as you said, to basically test who's actually made for it and meant for it. It's like not everyone is going to be a professional poker player. Not everyone is going to be an elite pianist or a motorcyclist throughout the whole continent of Europe. It's just like who's actually made for this thing, and life will present you intelligently with obstacles to really test your wherewithal and your ability to climb and discover and find out if you are made for it. And then if you are, the results will be there for you. I'm curious, how did
Yeah.
the internal game start to weave its way into your poker game and your performance and your elevation of play and flow state and your ability to play poker at an extremely high level? Because that's absolutely a part of it.
Yeah, I used to be called, so it's funny, my last name's Torelli. Like my friends would joke and call me Tiltorelli because like I tilted a lot when I playing poker. And now I actually think like one of my strength is my like sort of like resilience and just ability to not like to stay hungry and in the game in the face of adversity. And I think like I have some like key moments that I came back from these like, you know, big losses or downswings or like low chip stack to come back and spin it up. And like so it's funny because like I came from a place where I was not really very good at that. And um I think the first downswing really helped a lot to like realize that a lot of the losses that came from that round trip were not necessarily, I was outclassed and I was outmatched some of the
Hmm.
time. But some of the
Yeah.
time I lost the match. They didn't beat me, I lost. There's a difference between you losing versus them beating you. Like if I can't win because they're better than me, okay, I have to work on one thing. But if I lost the match because I didn't play my best, I have to work on a completely different thing. So I had that reflection of like, okay, why did I lose? And I needed to work on both. I always tell my clients and people like 50% of poker is being better at playing poker, like the strategy, the ranges, the equities, the math, the game theory, but 50% of poker is being a better poker player. mindset, tilt, control, focus, discipline, humility, bankroll management, habits, performance, like taking care of your mind and your body and your spirit. Like, so I realized I needed to work on both. And I think most people's journey in poker is to focus like 90% on the strategy and like 10% on the other thing. But I think as you move up, people see that there's a little bit more balance between those two things. And so at least for me, I learned like, wow, I need to work on being a better poker player. So I worked a lot on the mental game and I started like reading books. Um, I mean, I tried a lot of different things. I'm like a very much an experimenter, so I'll try a bunch of things and see what works. So I started playing tennis at the time. I was taking tennis lessons, and I realized like all these games at a high level were the same game. And you were playing tennis is another great game, very much like poker because it's single player. You can't talk to anyone or ask anyone for advice, and you're in your own head. Like tennis matches last 4 hours. You're in your own head the whole time. And so I was taking tennis. I was working with a tennis coach. I had a tennis bet, and I read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it just like completely clicked for me that like at the highest level, all these people were doing the same thing I was doing. They were just doing it across a different discipline. So I started
Right.
watching all the great tennis players and I would watch like the intensity and the focus of like Nadal and Federer, and I was just like, dude, I need to play poker on the level that they play tennis. Like I need to have that focus and that persona and that intensity, even if I never get to their level. So I started modeling my mental game routine like hand by hand after how they would model their serve. Like I was like, dude, every time this guy serves, he's locked the fuck in. Like he's not leaving
Yeah.
anything up for chance. And here I am going to the
Right.
hand. I'm sitting down for a hand of poker, hoping that like I'm in flow. Like I didn't even have like a plan. And so it's just like the whole thing, my whole perspective on the game changed. And I started to like completely develop an in-game routine and a mental routine and like a hand-for-hand routine, like they would do serve for serve. Like if you imagine Federer serving or Jordan at the free throw line, like he's just locked in. He has that ball, like, and he's ready to shoot. So I started to do that in poker. I started meditating 10 years ago, but before that, I worked with multiple mental coaches. So I, different places around the US and the world, like worked with different mental coaches, specifically for like performance in poker. So I did
Hmm.
various techniques like hypnosis and different things, visualization, different types of mental things to like really get myself locked in. So yeah, I mean, this was like a long journey, and I've tried a lot of things over the years. And I think this is something that I really put a lot of attention and effort into. But yeah, a lot of things have worked. But yeah, it's like it's a lifelong journey and struggle and challenge, and there's always another level. And I'm like far, far from perfect, and I never have a whole session or a whole tournament where I don't make a mistake. So there's always something to learn. Like you never play a tournament perfectly. Even if you win the tournament, there's a lot of mistakes that at least me I make along the way to that victory or that deep run. So
Hmm.
I'm always trying to work. Like I always try and get a little bit better every day. So I still do my my mindfulness practice every day and um try and develop habits of someone that would be uh be able to compete at a high level. So yeah, it's been like a lifelong practice.
Yeah, and it always will be. And
Yeah, exactly.
I love the parallels of poker to so many other things. I remember reading this book. I played golf 4 years in high school, and I got this book my junior year of high school, but I ended up reading it when I was 19, and it was Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. That's the title of the book. And I
Okay, I'm gonna write this
read
down.
it in the middle of playing poker, and there's like everything is able to be translated to poker. Like it
Yeah.
was completely translatable, and to see it in like a different discipline and to make the connection actually made it more realizable in the poker sense rather than looking at it through the poker lens. It's almost like seeing somebody else do something and you're able to see it a little bit clearer than watching yourself do it. In a sense that I've always connected with the Federers and just the high performers in general in terms of how stoic they are, how level-headed they remain in the most intense moments of their
Yeah.
career and their disciplines, and the importance that is to playing and performing at a high level. What is what's it like playing a 40-hour poker session and you get to those 30, 35, 40th hours and your performance maybe starts to fall off a little bit? How do you stay dialed in, and what are your routines that you've adopted over the years, similar to Federer having the same routine before every single serve that he hits?
Yeah. I think you said a really interesting thing. Like I think if I read the book about poker and, of trying to apply this to poker. I don't think it would have stuck because it would have felt too much like I was trying to be taught something and like, but like hearing it in tennis or like golf, it was just like, oh wow, like the whole thing is the same and this is what other great people I admire are doing, but it wasn't like any attachment to me, so it was just easier to
You're
kind of
right.
impact like import that into poker. Then I kind of felt like I was doing something like on my own and like creating my own version of it because I was like, oh wow, I'm making this connection. So it was easier to kind of see it. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, a lot of the sessions in Macau or in cash games or even tournaments, um, tournaments, if you play, you play a 5 day tournament, you'll play, 12 hours a day. It's 60 hours in 5 days. That's all. That's most people aren't working even 60 hours in 7 days. So
Hmm.
any one hand could be the end of your tournament life. So you could play perfect for 5 days and make one mistake on day six, and you're out, or 4 days and one mistake on day five, you're out of the tournament. So it's very unforgiving and it's very like humbling and it's very frustrating because you're only as good as your last hand, right? It's not like there's a cumulative track record. Like your track record is the last hand you played, and if you misplay that hand, you're out of the tournament. So there's really not a lot of room for not having this optimized or dialed in, just because, like we talked about before, like the the immediate feedback and the pain you get of losing, especially as you move up and play bigger, and like that pain is bigger because you're losing more. There's more at stake. You're losing more money. You're more exposed. You're more vulnerable. So like that, Freud says we run towards pleasure, but we also run from pain. I think the desire to run from pain is greater than the desire to run towards pleasure, unless you're doing some like very strong drug. So it's very like it's very uncomfortable to not get this right because like it's very costly in poker. And so like there's like a big desire to kind of like motivation to like fix and optimize this because you realize like how important it is. So in cash games, like the 40th hour, like you said, like, the only reason the game is running for longer than 24 hours is because someone that is probably losing a lot of money is stuck and wants to keep that game going. So the game is probably
Right.
bigger. There's more at stake. More people are more tired. So the delta between your edge and theirs is going to expand because if they are not in shape and you are in great shape, that on hour three doesn't really, extend in a like a vertical two divergent lines. But in hour 23, you're going to see those lines diverge a lot. So like there's just so much built around, optimizing this sort of thing. So um, the mental game is a big part of it. And I think a lot of strength training and physical training is actually mental training because your body is capable of a lot more than you actually think. Um,
Sure.
and a lot of it is, and anyone that's worked with a trainer knows this, like when you go to the gym on your own, or you run on your own, or you lift heavy things on your own, you're going to do something. And if you have a trainer, you can do more because like that person or that you got in like a warp, time warp in your head where you like just decided you were going to do it in a different way. So like I actually think a lot of the most intense physical training I do is basically mental training. And then if you could bring that to the table, like, hey, I'm tired, and you're going to reframe that into like this is an opportunity for me to like distinguish between how tired other people are and how I am. And it's like if you could like reframe a lot of those things in your head about and you like train that muscle every day at like in physical world by doing like very hard things, I think it just gets easier to kind of push yourself through adversity and tough times. And I think the gym is a great place to do that because it's like it's never there's always a moment where you can make a compromise or a reason why you can't finish a workout. Like I'm short on time or
Yep.
I'm tired or this or it's heavy or that or I'm just going to do this instead. And like every workout, even to this day, been doing this, working out like very consistently for a very long time. Like even today, like every workout, there's a moment where you have to decide if you're going to cut a corner or not. And so like just overriding that like lizard brain kind of like default thinking that our software is not really like where you want it to be, like just default overriding that every time. And then when you're in a tough situation in life or in poker or a stressful environment, like you've kind of already like built this conditioning and this resilience and this like fortitude that like I do what I set my intention on. Like I finish the things I start. I build that confidence to like I can execute in a tough time. I could get to where I want to go. I could pick myself back up. Yeah, the meditation, the visualization, like I try and visualize like how I'm gonna perform in tough moments.
Yep.
So like I'll do some like random extreme shit. Like I'll like I mean this kind of might sound like stupid, but like I'll sprint as fast as I can. Like I'll put it at 10.0 on a treadmill and I'll sprint for 90 seconds and I'll like mentally replay in my head all the big spots I was playing. Because if I can like remain calm while running as fast as I can and like concentrate on a hand, it's way easier to do when I'm like sitting at the table and I'm not sprinting. So like I've put my
Right.
body through like an immense amount of stress in a very high pressure moment for like, 6 figures in a decision. but like I did that under like immense physical distress so that when I'm at the table, like I'm not as stressed perhaps
Right.
as the other people when I'm making a big decision. I'm just like, oh, this is easy. I already did this running on the treadmill. Like I'm calm. Like I had a client that told me he was trying to qualify for a test and like only the best person was able to like go from like India to go into the school to get to like study at a prestigious university in America. And he
Hmm.
basically like wanted to like plan for every scenario. And in India, it was like super oppressively hot. And so he would like take the test without the air in his house in case the air conditioning broke in the exam while he was taking the test because he knew that like everyone else would crumble and fail. But he would be like, I've already done this in 110-degree heat. And the air went out while he was taking the test and he scored the best and got into the school. And now he's like, American dream, like super like wealthy guy in tech in San Francisco. But I was just thinking about this shit. Like this applies like to every other scenario. Like if you watch The Last Dance and Jordan, like not to compare myself to anyone great or anything, but like I aspire to like these things that I see other people doing. And like if
For
you
sure.
watch Jordan in The Last Dance, like he was just like completely ballistic about all this shit, you know? And so it's like if you want to compete, and I love to like try and compete, like I'll try and push myself and I'll try and do these things because I also know like these are things I'm good at, and I know other people are better than me at a lot of other aspects of poker. Like they're better at numbers than me. They're like, better at the theory, or they're better at this and that. So like I got to do something that I could find my edge, and I also enjoy it. And so like I kind of lean into my strengths, but yeah, it's like there's always something I think I could do to try and get a little bit better. And I think eating super healthy is key. Like sometimes fasting when you're at the table like could help. It could be a double-edged sword. Hydration and like everything that goes in your body is fuel or fire. So you really got to be careful about all of those things. And like my caffeine intake, like just kind of being dialed in poker mode is important.
Yeah, I love the edges, and there's always an edge. Like there's always another edge, and that's like what is so addicting constantly with so many of these things. It's like even you talk about sprinting for 90 seconds thinking of hands. It's like that's an
That might
edge
be a
that
silly one,
in
but
no, but it's so real because your body, you're like training your body to be as ramped up as possible. And you're basically at this level here. And then when you sit down at the table, you're actually in the moment facing an all-in decision for, stacks of cash or to make or break a tournament. You're here, you're down here, and your body's thus able to make a more efficient, easier, more optimal decision. And it's like, why would you not do that? It even applies to public speaking. The other week, I saw this post online of somebody that had a speech coming up, and he was jogging or running as he was preparing the speech, such that when his body got a little bit excited or nervous going into the speech, he was already prepared for it physiologically. And he
yeah,
had
for
gone
sure.
through it before. And it's like that preparation, that is another edge, and it's a constant stacking of those things. I think it's James Clear that, or one of these guys that talks about the accumulation of marginal gains over time, and it's like that you constantly stack these edges, whether it's eating healthy or sprinting 10.0 on a treadmill, and it's like they add up over time, and those things can make the slightest bit of difference between making the right decision in a poker hand and winning and losing a tournament. And it's like, why would you not, if you're truly about it and you truly want it bad enough, why would you not be ballistic like a Michael Jordan is in basketball to go after every edge possible?
Yeah, I actually that's the thing is like I do enjoy it. So it's like
Right.
it is restrictive. Like there is a lot of discipline when I'm in poker mode, but I don't live my life this way. Like I kind of see it like driving a car in fifth gear. Like it's great to be on the highway, but like you're not always taking the car in fifth gear. So like when I'm in poker mode, I'm very like completely locked in. Like during the World Series, you go to Vegas, this summer I went for like 5 weeks. Like I'm just, I'm completely on it. Like there's no
Hmm.
deviation of any kind. But I don't live 52 weeks a year like that. I don't even want to do that.
Okay.
And the ups and downs and the highs and lows make being in poker mode exciting. Like I can't wait to get back in, but by the time I'm done, I'm like I'm happy to go out and have like a pastry and take a day off and like not, like just like live my life and not try and be in performance mode. I'm existing in the world. I'm focused on other things. I'm working on business. I'm still playing poker, but like it's not like super locked in with a
Yeah.
in a massive high stakes tournament, like massive like pressure situation. There's like
Hmm.
there's a lot of difference between competitive. It's like athletes, they have an on season and an off season. So
Right.
it's like it's just you're not it's not always game day.
Yeah.
Like a massive spot where you're trying to optimize for it. So I like that balance, and I enjoy both sides of it. I enjoy being off the train, I enjoy being on the train, and so it's like when I'm on it, it's like I want to give it everything because I'm choosing to do it, and so it's like I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, there absolutely is a balance to it. And I think both sides feed into each other and make them, more efficient or, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it. I think you squeeze more juice out of it as a result rather than burning out on one side or the other as a result of being out of balance. I
definitely.
I saw that you went on this interview with this guy named Bobby Hoffman in 2017
Oh wow.
about
Yeah.
motivation, and I saw it made it into a motivation textbook or some piece of literature similar to that. I was curious,
Yeah,
what
an
was the
academic
interview
journal. Yeah.
about? Because I haven't watched it, but it kind of caught my eyes as maybe there's something there.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. PhD from actually from nearby you in Florida, and he was doing a book on like yeah, like you said, like an academic kind of book on trying to find people's motivation for doing things that were competent in their field.
Hmm.
And it's funny because like I uh went back to school after SMU. I went back for a semester, and I took a class, and there was a big part of it was focused on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And it was funny because I had gone through this roller coaster in poker, and I had seen firsthand like this sort of play out in my own life and experiences between like how I was motivated and whether I was focused on the money or focused on the process. And
Hmm.
so one of the takeaways I had from this class was like when you have intrinsic motivation for something and then an extrinsic motivator comes in, most often money, right? That reduces the intrinsic motivation. So it's like it's a really delicate thing. And it's like usually I find that it's like the process is, at least for me, is like you start off with a desire for something. Then that thing becomes, oh, how do I monetize this thing? Then you monetize that thing, and then you lose the desire for the thing because you're focused on monetizing the thing so much that you stop doing the creative artistry. Like we said, poker's like an art. You stop the art part and you focus on the science part, and then you're like, I didn't get into this for the science. Like people, for example, oh, I love baking, and then you open a bakery, and then your whole job life is about managing a business and other people and whatever, and you stop baking the fucking thing that you wanted to bake in the beginning. You know what I mean? So it's like this happens across all sorts of things. But for me, it was like interesting exploration with him because it was my takeaway from it was like I could only play poker, or I have to engineer circumstances or get my mindset right that I'm playing for the right reason. And I have to play because poker is the number one thing I want to do that day. Like that's my benchmark now for whether I even go to a tournament. So people are like, "Oh, you're going to EPT, the next EPT, which is Malta in October." And it's like, well, I don't think about, oh, it's a great opportunity. Oh, you can make a lot. Oh, there's this there. Oh, there's this opportunity there. I think, is this the number one thing I want to do in my life right now? Because otherwise, like everything else is secondary to that thing. So if it's not my
Hmm.
number one motivation, I won't even play. And I think this is like a more mature place that I got to, because before I would force myself to play, I would try and trick myself. I would try and like, override my intuition with logic. And I would usually pay the price. Cause like, if I didn't want to be there, I would subconsciously maybe even find a way to self eject so I wasn't there. That's kind of like the self awareness thing. So much of this is is part of that motivation mechanism, and it's really hard to keep it in a pure place when there is an extrinsic motivator coming in, because that is the thing that overrides the intrinsic motivation. And so that's a battle, and that's something that I've, like you said, it's like a lifelong learning process, a lifelong battle. You never always get it right, but like being aware of the mechanism and trying to stay true to that purpose um, has been really helpful. It's really impactful. And I try and take that to other things I want to do in life too, because it's like it's easy to like justify things like, oh, I should do this because this. Anytime I use the word should, I'm very
Yeah.
like particular. Like hypnosis, you learn a lot about like NLP and the things that you're telling yourself, and like the words that you're using are like programming your subconscious mind to think about reality in a certain way. And so I'm like, if I ever say should, or I have, like have and should are like really, really dangerous words for me. Because if I say I have to do something or I should do something, I don't even it's like, I mean, many people might even relate to this. Like, you're not even always aware that you're using those words, but you're also programming
Yeah.
yourself to think about things in a certain way that you're conditioning yourself to do those things, but you're doing it against what you truly feel. Because if you're saying you should do something, it's like, well, why don't you want to do something? Why don't you choose to do something? Or if I need to do something, do you actually need to do it or do you want to do it? And so when I worked with a mental coach, they would like break and interrupt my patterns of talking to like rewire how I was thinking to make me more aware of what I was saying about the things I was saying that I wanted. And I remember a moment where I said to the person I was working with, I says like, "Oh, I need to do this," and they said, "Do you need to or do you want to?" And it was like, "Oh shit!" Like I was just like, "Wow!" Like, and that like totally. It was a time I was doing the hypnosis thing. It was like it reframed my whole perspective on this. So like the motivation thing, it's a deep rabbit hole, and like I've learned like a
Yeah.
lot about it, but it's like it's like a constant thing I have to like stay in flow. I try and just think like my life is like a river and there's a certain way the current is going. And the hardest thing to do is just get in the boat and let the river take you. Like it's the hardest thing to do. You want to paddle, you want to go this way, you want to go that way, you want to deny where the water is going, you want to swim upstream. It's like, it sounds like it's the easy thing and it's like the natural path of life, but it's like, it's really hard to stay in the boat and float downstream. So it's like I try and live my life that way, but there's a lot a lot of noise around, you know?
Yeah, and there's just like a constant recalibration to it, and lessons that you pick up as you deviate from it. And I think of I think of Scotty Scheffler, or I think of Bashar is actually one of the things that comes to my mind is
Yeah.
that he says, his formula that he says is to follow your highest excitement to the best of your ability with zero insistence on the outcome.
Yeah,
And it sounds
it's
like
money.
most that's like really it, and it's really a lot of what we talked about today. It's like you're following what brings you the most joy naturally as a product of doing it, not as something that comes from it. And you do that to the best of your ability with zero insistence on what can come from it. And that's actually the best compass for you because
Yeah.
there's certain things that you're excited, and then it brings a level of excitement to your life. And I remember hearing this thing from this guy Joe Hudson, who is more of an executive coach, but he's got some great content online. And he said he did a test for 2 weeks where he was only going to do whatever he wanted, like strictly something that he wanted to do. And he got to a point where the garbage can was full and it was smelling really bad. And he was like, I don't want to take the garbage out. And it was kind of festering for a little bit, but eventually he got to a point where he found a way to make taking the garbage out enjoyable and exciting, and thus he did it and he got it done. And I think we can do anything with excitement. Like excitement is always present in the field of reality. It's you know as soon as we throw the shoulds or the haves to on top of things, it becomes an obligation, and it feels like there's a weight or a charge to it, and then there's the reverberation and energy that we receive as a result. Versus, I'm doing this purely for the sake of it, out of excitement, and just to be essentially a kid, and to flow in a state of wonder and joy and presence and curiosity. I think that's where really all of the best fruits of life come from.
Yeah, it's a good observation, man. It's interesting you said that. It's a cool story, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, this is like not. I mean, I say these things, but it's not like I'm like some walking example of all this. Like, I mean, I struggle with all
Right.
these things all the time, and like I often find myself in mental states where I'm like, okay, whatever, find a way to not enjoy something. It's easy to kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this. I have to do this, or like just like have a certain type of self-talk, and it's always be mindful of that and being aware of it and auditing it and reframing a lot of things, right? But it's like a daily, ongoing, multiple times a day habitual practice where it's like it's so easy to
Yeah.
slip. It's you always have to reframe because there's a lot of things you can look at um as uh your self-talk around those things could either be negative, like, oh, I don't want to pick up trash, I don't want to do the dishes, I don't want to, clean the floor. Like there's a lot of things in daily minutia of life that like you can easily feel that way about. And so keeping energy up and high and like staying in that state. Like I said, floating down river, like just floating is really hard. Like it's really hard to be in that elevated mindset of like floating. I think when I did well in poker, it's like I take a little bit of that to the tournament where I'm almost like a little bit elevated because like I don't feel any pressure or stress or um expectation around the tournament. I'm just, hey, I'm here to play and like I can't lose because I've already won because I'm here.
Yeah.
And like that like not just saying those things, but like energetically internalizing that state is a challenge. And when you get there, like I think really good things in life generally, it's, I mean, poker for me, like, you know, everyone for their own things, like I think good things happen. So
I think that's really powerful to get to something and get to a point, a final thing where you're like, I can't lose because I'm already here doing what I love. And I don't know, I feel like we talked over DMs about Scotty Scheffler. I actually feel like what he shared at the Open is a part of why he's been so successful because it's not so important to him to win and to celebrate and to make the money. He has other things that he finds much more fulfillment in. And
yeah,
he mentioned his family. And I think that actually allows him to go out there and play with a certain level of detachment from it. And part of it also is that he really enjoys the work. And part of it as well, he talked about it's like we're not perfect, so to speak. We slip up or whatever, and it's part of the human experience. It's part of our humanity. I think that's part of the we have the ability to give ourselves grace as a result of our human state. And I think that's part of the journey and actually realizing our highest selves is realizing our truest form, which is humanity in part. So I think it's fascinating for somebody at the highest level, again, as we talked about over DM, to to win so many tournaments and to be like, yeah, like I don't really care. Like I don't really care about inspiring the next generation. And like this it's like not a fulfilling journey. And he questions it constantly, but he still comes back to it because I think there's still a part of him that enjoys the game for the sake of the game, and he loves competing as well, and he loves the excitement of it. But he doesn't do it to win. He does it to play, and winning is a product of it. And I think he wins a lot because he's doing it to play and not for the product of it. And there's natural ability and work that goes into it and all that stuff too. But I think it's a great teaching moment for a lot of people across all sorts of different arts of life, to do something, not for the celebration and the moment. And you see even these stories and even spiritually, there's a book that I have that's called After the Ecstasy, The Laundry. And it's like these people reach these states of enlightenment and they're on a long meditation retreat and they feel this huge wave of euphoria and bliss wash over them and they're in this state for 2, 3, 4 weeks. But then there's like a come down level to it.
yeah,
And it happens all the time when people win too. And I remember I was at the Masters this year. I was lucky enough and blessed to be able to go with my father, for free from a friend. And we were there on Sunday and we saw Rory McIlroy win. And this was basically the pinnacle for him. And he had been fighting over a decade to close out the Grand Slam, of
right.
his career in terms of majors in golf. And he did it. And even if you were watching on TV, you could see it just like this massive weight off his shoulders. It felt like this massive balloon had popped inside of him and he just released. And I
Yeah.
saw him walking from the 18th green towards the clubhouse. I had this view where he was about 30, 40 feet away from me and he was, crying and holding his head. And I had never seen a human being in that state of relief before in my life. And it was,
Wow.
it was like really visceral to see. And I think it was because he had assigned so much importance to it and so much charge to winning the Masters, and that actually pushed him away from winning it for a long time. And
Yeah, there's
and
that too.
for whatever reason, he was able to do it and pull through. But I remember saying to a spiritual teacher of mine, like, "Hey, I wonder how he's going to be in the coming months as a result of this huge, wave of relief. Is there going to be this balancing act where he falls off in play, and then
Yeah, those are probably the hardest month. It's probably harder after you win than before you win. I think.
yeah,
I
because
think.
you get there and you're
Yeah.
like, I won. And Scotty talked about it in that interview at the Open. He's like, yeah, you win, the Byron Nelson, which he had been working 31 years of his, or, however long, his whole life to win. And he wins and he celebrates with his family for 2 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, well, what are we doing for dinner? And
Right.
it's like life moves on. So I was wondering like what Rory would feel the next day waking up. It's like, oh, I've won, but like all of life is still life. And yeah, there was I think a moment like a month or so after where he had like a driver controversy and he got a little bit caught up and I was like, I wonder if this plays into it, but I'm not really here to speculate on it. But I think it's just a fascinating topic in general and something you don't really hear about often from athletes and high performers.
Yeah, like it's true. I put out I think my most one of the most popular posts this summer was something I wrote about like the main event and was like, during the main event, and everyone's like, dream as a poker player, like, at least me starting out. Yeah, so I started, I was 16 years old. I watched Chris Moneymaker win the main event, and that became like the dream. That is
The
like,
thing,
the
yeah.
US Open, or, like the Wimbledon, or like whatever it is, like the pinnacle of poker. And so I put out this post and it was like, okay, well, it's day one of the main. Okay, so you win the main, you play the main, 10 days later, you win, you have 10 million, a bracelet, a place in poker history. And, you do what you're supposed to do. You take time off, you travel 5-star resorts, you buy a car and like, you're like, I'm going to quit poker. I'm going to retire. But like a year later, you're a mess. A couple years later, like, there's a high and there's a moment where like all of these things are new and novel and exciting and incredible. But then, life feels empty. You kind of lost the struggle, the growth. You're not getting better every day. You're not improving. Maybe you're like, you're off the train, you're gaining weight, you're kind of like out of it. You don't have like a focus or a purpose or anything you're building, not getting better. So what do you do? Like, you go back to poker. You're like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm
Right.
going to go back and play poker. So you're going to hop in a 1500 event or a 3K event. And, now it doesn't matter if you win, you have the money, you already, you have the title, you've already proven everything. But now you're like, actually maybe feel more alive playing the 1500 than you did playing the 10K, because like now you're not playing the 1500 or the 5K or the 10K. You're not playing it with any expectation. You're not playing it because it's going to change anything. You're playing it because like this is what's left. Like this is what you want to do with your time. Like, yeah, the golfer mentioned too, like, yeah, he wants to, have a family, and he cares about his, his inner circle and his relationships. Of course, the only thing in life isn't work and building, but aside from that, you're going to have something you do with relationships and people you love and care about. And you're going to spread love around the people that you love, but you're also going to do something to challenge yourself, to stimulate yourself, to grow, to get better, to learn, to improve, to be curious, to play, to, like you said, to be like a kid again. Like, you're going to want to try and compete. And so what you go back to golf, you go swing the club again, because like,
Yeah.
so you kind of get to a place where it's like, the purpose is the purpose is just to play the game. Like, you've already kind of won because you're sitting down at the table. Because like, even if you round trip it full circle and you sit there in a meditation, you think about then what, then what, then what, you visualize the win. Like, people stop there and visualize the win, but then if you get the win, or you get the thing, or you get the prize, or you get the goal, you get the house, you get the whatever, and then what? Then like, people don't think about the time after that. But even if you round trip it, it's almost like you're going to be right back where you are today. You're going to be back on the climb. You might climb a different mountain, but like, you're only at the top for like so few seconds. You're only at the top till your next loss, right? Like, and I
Yeah.
was funny because I was like playing the Hustler, the live stream after Live the Bike, and I was like, I remember a moment where I had my ups and downs. I had days where I got smashed, but I also had a day where I smashed it. And I went on a run the next morning, same run I do every day, whether I win or lose. I go on a run up the mountain, whatever. And I went on the run, I got to the top of the mountain, and I was like, whoa, like, I'm actually in a moment in my life where I'm on top of the mountain. And I was like, I just took a video and I wrote down my thoughts and I took a photo, and like, I just remembered like I had the awareness and the maturity to realize I was on top of the mountain and to see the mountain for what it was. And it was so much sweeter because I knew that like I was going to go back to the Hustler next week and probably get my ass handed to me, and I was going to be off the mountain. I was going to be back on the fucking climb. And it was just like, the moments are sweeter, but you also see them for what they are. You see that you can't live in this like perfect peak state of, I mean, I don't do ecstasy, but like of ecstasy of what, whether
Yeah.
it's natural or induced. Like, you're not going to live on that high, and the come down, the faster and the quicker the market goes up, the more it can drop, right? So like, the faster and the quicker you get up that, you spin up the roller coaster, the more risk there is that like a lot more could come crashing down on the downside to kind of like get back to base camp. So it's like, you see it for what it is. And it's like, now every time I get to sit at the table, I am like a little fucking kid. Like, I've round tripped this
Yeah.
shit. It's been 20 years. Like, since I started playing professionally, 22 since my first hand of poker. It's like, I was at the World Series this summer playing the 1500. There's nowhere I'd rather be. It's like, there's just nowhere I'd rather be. And there's also times when I'm not playing poker and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not playing poker right now. But when I'm there, if I could get to that place where like, I'm just so grateful to get to sit down at the play, because I know how many things in life can happen. I've had, external things happen that take you away from poker. Like, it's just, it's just lucky to be able to have all the stars align, whether it's luck or the opportunity or the health or the well-being or whatever, just to be able to sit down at the table or play or compete or do whatever it is you love, whether it's to paint or to cook or to bake or like just to be able to do that gift one more day is like I've already considered it a win. Like if I win the tournament,
Yeah.
that's also great. But like I just want to play for 5 days. Like I'm just so happy to do that. I'm so grateful to be able to do that. And that to me is the win. Like that's so it's a different relationship with poker now. It's like a much more mature and deeper relationship, kind of like being in in a marriage versus a date. But I really love the game. I'm still grateful to play, and it's like I think that is the purpose, just to be able to play.
Yeah, you can't lose. And I think it's incredibly freeing and so much more enjoyable. You talk about all the time, at least recently, especially on your
Yeah.
Twitter, of kind of learning different things in terms of like what you actually want. And you talked about like this journey in Italy, but I believe it was, where you learned that what you wanted sometimes was to spend a bunch of time in a coffee shop and to meet other people and socialize, and there's a lot of fruit that comes from that. And it's not all about being in the perfect state. It's like, because I think so many people are trying to live in this perfect peak state all the time, and they realize it's not actually realistic. And secondly, it's not actually what they want. So I would ask you, what is it that you actually want?
Yeah, I want to. I mean, I try and like on a daily basis, I try and like feel good every day. I think there's like a big correlation between, of course, you want to work on meaningful things and be around meaningful people, but a lot of life is like a solo player game. You're on your own a lot, or like even if you're working, you're kind of like you're in your own head, focused on your own thing, whether it's on the computer or writing. And I think so. Like if I feel good because I've taken care of myself and my health, like my mental health and my like physical health, and I slept and um, I allowed time and space for my own things, like that is really important. So like if I work out, I eat well, I sleep, I do my mindfulness meditation exercise, like my body feels good. Like that is a really like base layer way to like whatever I build on top of that, like the day is going to be better. So I think like trying to have that structure and that foundation for my life to like win the day is really helpful. And then
Big time.
I try and measure like a good barometer for my life. Um, because what I want at any one time, like you said, the guy tried to follow his highest joy with no expectation of the outcome for 2 weeks. It's very hard to do because what you want sometimes changes. And you kind of want different things. Like sometimes you want to work out, sometimes you don't want to work out, and then you don't know whether or not which one is true because are you just being lazy or you actually need a day off? So like, and that sort of applies to a lot of things. But like, I do have a good barometer for my life, and it's like, how excited am I on a day where I'm in the field, like where I'm doing something active? Like how excited am I 1 to 10 to get up tomorrow and do and live tomorrow and do what is on my plate and to work on what I'm working on or to spend my time with the people I'm spending it with or on the things I'm spending it on or solving the problems I'm trying to solve. And so like that's a really good barometer. And if I'm like I can't wait to go to bed to get up and have my coffee and go on my run or like do my workout and like get in it, I feel like very aligned. And that's like a really good barometer for what I'm trying to do.
Definitely. What pulls you away from that? What takes you off that path, and what lessons have you learned from that over the years?
Yeah, I think I've done a better job. I think I it, I mean there's like a shiny object like syndrome that is easy to get off the path. I think for a lot of people, I could speak for me, but I see this happening a
Definitely.
lot where there's like a new shiny thing in a lot of different ways in life. And so we're constantly like bombarded with stimulation for other things and like ways that people believe that we should live our lives. When you see other people share their worldview on social media, and it's done in a very like glamorized way, and sometimes like a sort of dogmatic way, where like this is the best way to live, and there's like one right answer, and like this is what you need in life, or this will make you better, healthier, happier, or whatever. And so like, and then you're seeing a lot of the highlight reel of a lot of other things in the world. And then there's also like a lot of, depending on what industry you're in, like, oh, this business is the new hot business to start, or this AI program is the
Yeah,
new investment to make. Like there's a lot of shiny object syndrome and like kind of everything. And so I think staying true to like what you want to do and what you want to like focus on is like a big challenge and like more in the world of today. And I also am I travel and I move like locations. And so I think everyone to some extent is a product of their environment. But I notice that I can form like, or not just forms of the best word, but I like mold into my environment in a way that is I'm good. I've gotten good at that because I started traveling when I was young to like play poker in different places. And so I got good at like
Hmm.
getting into different environments, but I am a product of like where I am in the world. And so like when I'm in a certain place, certain things seem more important than when I'm in other places. Also, it's a cultural thing. Like in Asia, the values are very different than the values in America of like what's important. And in Europe, I'm a dual citizen of Italy, like the values of society and like what people place importance on and what is like not even necessarily status, but what people like expect and value is very different. And so like you're kind of like
Hmm.
moving on a pendulum, but to stay in your lane of like what you want and what you value and what you want to do is just like it's one of those lifelong challenges, you know. And then it's also doing that, but evolving to where it's always easy to stay comfortable in the current thing. And it's sometimes hard to move to the next thing because the next thing is unknown and uncomfortable and you might fail and it might not work and whatever. And there's all those like talks that you could go on in your head. And so it's like sometimes I find myself having to nudge myself to like, hey, I'm no longer growing at this thing. And yes, I'm good at it or it comes naturally and I could keep doing it. But it's like what got me here won't get me there. And it's like I've grown out of this thing and now it's time to like expand into the next one, even if I don't know what that is. And so I have to like I get like comfortable in what I'm doing, and it's hard to kind of like evolve and push myself to go to that next step and that next level. And I have to like, this is like a constant like process that I'm kind of nudging myself on. So yeah, there's a lot of factors. Like you said, sometimes too,
Yeah.
it's some or maybe I was having this, maybe I was talking about this at lunch, but like it's hard to know um sometimes too what you think you want and then you try it and it's not what you thought it was. And so it's like there's not like a fixed North Star, it's like a moving
Right.
target to some extent, and it's an evolving set of things, what you want at any time or what you're focused on.
Which is why I think experimenting, as you touched on earlier, is so critical. And it's like it allows you to actually find out instead of it being, potential unrealized constantly. How do you
Yeah, that's
how do
fair.
you view discipline over the years, and what's your relationship with it? Is it like I'm a disciplined person? How
Yeah,
do you instill it all? Because it's such like a buzzword, especially
I
nowadays.
know.
I'm curious your
So
take on it.
I was very meticulous and like dogmatic about this when I was younger, and I thought like there was some I probably got some like sense of accomplishment intrinsically in just like being that disciplined and that like strict. It was almost like it wasn't like a self-punishment necessarily because it wasn't like punishment. It wasn't like I was doing something like bad or wrong, but it was like there was some like weird satisfaction out of like trying to check off all these things that like I thought would be like important to have a productive day or to like do, be optimized or like manage my calendar or do these like Pomodoro method of time management where I was going to be super optimized. So like everything became like how do you be the most optimized? And like poker kind of leads, I think it's like naturally leads down that path because every single hand
Hmm.
you're sort of looking at like how could you maximize the expected value of that hand by utilizing your chips in the best way possible. So it's like it's just a kind of like hardwired to think this way about every single micro decision, even in poker, like you play thousands of hands a day or whatever. So like you're just like constantly optimizing for everything. And so like I kind of bled that over into my life and like kind of took some like satisfaction in it. Like I'm going to be super disciplined and optimized and like write out my hourly calendar and all this stuff. I used to track my time blocks in 15-minute increments. I read a book called 168 Hours because there's 168 hours in a week. And so I would time every single 15-minute block and I would color code them. And then I would break it down in a pie chart with like my like designer or whatever. And I would figure out like exactly how I spent all of my time. And it was very um eye-opening exercise. Like I highly recommend everyone do it once, but like to live like that is not,
Mm.
like to be like that disciplined is just like it was like counterproductive. Like you can't be in flow when like
Yeah.
you're so rigid about like your to-do list or like your calendar or like everything has to be optimized and organized. So now I'm kind of like so I think tracking every minute you spend or like whatever, like reasonable like block of time and every dollar you spend, both of those exercises I've done many times in separate places and countries and like points in my life around the world. And both of those are incredibly eye-opening and liberating. But I think to live that way all the time is also completely inflexible and allows for like no spontaneity or creativity. So now I try and be like as much of the opposite as possible. Like it's actually kind of ironic. Like I try and have like as very little things on my calendar as possible. And I have like a general like direction of where I want my life to go. And then underneath that, I have like a general next step of what project I need to complete at this point in my life. So if it's like, hey, I'm working on a like a whatever, a book proposal, for example, like, okay, I need like this is the general thing I'm focused on. But then other than that, like on a day-to-day basis, it's like I'm very much like how do like kind of like Bashar, like how do I listen to, and I don't always get this right. I definitely don't live this way. So I don't think I'm like some, example of like living it, following your highest energy at all the time, like not taking out my trash even if it smells. Like I'm not like that, like nowhere near. But I try and live more in that direction of like, okay, what would bring me the highest joy today, and like how can I, as close to possible, follow that within the bounds of okay, I do have this call today and I have this lunch and I have this like activity that's gonna, I want to finish this thing today, even if I don't always feel like finishing it. Like I said I would finish this thing today, I'm gonna do it. But how do I live like following my highest energy? So now I would say like I'm actually very productive and I'm more in sync and in flow, but I wouldn't necessarily use the word like rigorous or disciplined to
Yeah.
describe my behavior. There's certain things that naturally come very well for me. Like I'm very disciplined about my diet and exercising, but I don't feel like I'm placing constraints or limitations on myself. Like I genuinely want to eat healthy and go to the gym. So people would see that as disciplined because for a lot of people that's like a big conscious trade to like not do this to go do that. But for me, it's like it doesn't feel like discipline. So I don't approach it with the heaviness that I might if I was like, I have to do this because I have to lose weight, or like I have to do this because I need to run a 7 minute mile. Like I don't feel any of that. I just like do it because I enjoy it. Um, so yeah, I try and live that way now. So I'm much more like I've kind of come full circle on this, and and I think there is a bit of a balance. Like when I'm in poker mode, I'm much more like the the intention I have is so much more focused that again, I don't feel like I'm giving things up by being as rigorous as I am. But if someone looked at my
Right.
behavior and my habits and my life and my diet, like during poker time, they would be like, this guy's super disciplined. But because it's like, a very isolated sprint, I don't bring that heaviness to it. So I think it's all about
Yeah.
balance. And again, it's like a constant iteration and struggle to dial it in. Like I am far from perfect and I'm not always there, but I've kind of come full circle on this topic.
Yeah, I think a lot of the essence of what you talked about is that most of the things that you do that would be considered disciplined, you do them not out of obligation, and that's what actually helps you do them over time
Yeah.
consistently. And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people get into discipline with like an obligatory mindset of like I have to do this out of obligation in order to, you know, be productive or feel good about myself for today or whatever. And then it carries that like again pendulum of energy, which is actually counterproductive ultimately. And I'm very much the same way in terms of like optimization across the board, like that like most optimal. I just love that like the mental stimulation of it, but actually the practicality of optimizing for diet or environment or poker play style or even like fourth downs on football or like learning all sorts of
Yeah.
these different things. And it's just like for whatever reason the way my brain is wired, but it's like over optimizing and getting out of balance is when I can lose some of the calibration to things. I love the analogy too of
Also the joy too, right? Like when you're
yeah,
doing something because it's on your to-do list and it's like even if it's something you want to do, when it becomes extrinsic, like, oh, I have to do this to check off all my things or to feel good about myself or, to whatever, it's like it's no longer like a joy. Like sometimes I want to go to the gym, sometimes I want to go on a run, sometimes like, I don't want to, or I have like I rather work and I'm in flow and I'm like, okay, I, was gonna go, but today who cares? I'm not gonna go, I'm gonna work instead, like
it's fine.
so it,
Yeah.
it makes the things that you do more like joyful, I think, because it's like they're more intentional and they're just like kind of more aligned.
Yeah, more intrinsically motivated. And I think a beautiful analogy is a river. It's like a river has this beautiful flow to it and it goes back to the ocean ultimately, but it's a river and it flows in such a beautiful, harmonious and natural way because it has banks to it. It has a structure that allows it to
Yeah.
flow in a certain way. Whereas if you didn't have any structure to it, it'd just be a blob of water, ultimately a mess going nowhere. And that's not it. So it's like finding the yin and yang between the two things. And we'll start to wrap up here. I did have one more question for you. I'm curious if you could offer some of the best pieces of advice that you've picked up along the way, be it poker or life in general. I think you'd have a ton of insight there. So I'm curious what they are.
Oh man.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a great name. Um, I guess, I guess like, I guess, I think mm, what's really
Pieces of
helped me,
advice
I
for
don't want to like
yourself.
necessarily
Yeah.
give like like tell someone else what to do, but like what's helped me is like try to like map my actions to what um what is really meaningful to me and
Hmm.
to audit those things to be conscious of like where my time and my money are going. Those are, you use the verb spend when you associate with time and money because like you have sort of like a bank of these two things and you can sort of like spend it, right? You're like making a trade with that money or that time. And um it not to like, make it so meticulous or like an equation, but like starting to think about the trade-off between where these things are being utilized or like invested might be a better word because if you're not getting an ROI on it, that might make you question about how you're spending those things. But like to look at um, those two things and how they're being used in my life and like what I'm getting in return for those things. So like where is the asymmetry? Like where is the thing where I have like very low input but very high output? So like there's certain activities that people probably enjoy on a daily basis that don't require a lot of time, stress, or effort, but they give them a lot of joy. So it's like, how
Hmm.
do I kind of bring more of those things? And the same thing is also true. Like, what are the things in my life that I'm doing or the areas of my life that are causing me the most problems? And like where are the things that I'm doing that are bringing me the least amount of joy, or with a money equation, like what are the things that I'm spending the most money on that are bringing me the least joy, and what are the things that I'm spending not a lot of money on that are bringing me a disproportionate ROI on that dollar spent. So you mentioned the coffee shop in Italy. I told you I've tracked every single dollar I've spent for different months. I do a month at a time, and I do it in different places around the world at different times in my life. And it's very eye-opening and it's fascinating. And so it's like in the same way, it's like 168 hours kind of forces you to look at every single way you spend your time. This
Hmm.
exercise forces you to look at how you spend every single dollar. And these things have been like combining these two things has been like extremely empowering and liberating because it's like, wow, like my very ideal life like costs a lot less than I would have originally thought if I can control how I spend my time. So if I can combine this like time and money equation, the things that I like enjoy and value like don't really cost that much, and I could like kind of hack it by like spending a very little bit to get a lot of ROI from those things. Like the gym doesn't cost that much, or like a coffee shop, sitting at a coffee shop for 90 minutes, working on something or reading a book or like doing something I love doesn't cost that much, but it's like brings me immense joy and I could like block out that time every single day. So how do I like kind of engineer my life to have like this equation of like how I'm investing my time and money gives me the highest ROI? And then like thinking about things from that point of view and like what levers can I pull and what things I can change and like always be accountable to my reality because like you know every experience I have is like is feedback from the input that I put out, rather whether it's like my energy or my time or decision I made. And so I kind of think of
Hmm.
things like a hand of poker, and that's really helped me. Like if I play this hand this way, it'll lead to this result. If I change the way I play the hand, I might have a different outcome. And like focus on how I play the hand, not what cards come. Like I can't control the cards that come,
Mm.
but I can control how I play the hand and how I react to the cards that come. And so like these are the things that I can control. I control how I spend my time. I control where my thoughts are, like what is my attention on, and I can control where I spend my money. So like those things are all like energy in different forms. It's like I can control all forms of my energy. And so like, that's like kind of the game I've tried to play. And again, I don't always get it right. I'm not trying to like preach like this is like I don't want to say it's like advice because like I'm not claiming to be like the best at like I'm not Bashar who's probably like way better at this than me. But like I try and play that game as much as possible and like optimize for
Hmm.
those things. And then like, you know, hopefully the reality around me will be much more preferable, right? It's like kind of like, winning money is the product of playing poker well. And so it's like creating a good reality is the product of like managing your energy, different forms, different mediums, in the best way possible.
Yeah, I
And
swear we
luck. I
have.
mean, luck is obviously a big part of poker. Luck is also a big part of reality, like, where you're born and education you're given and, your childhood. Like there's a distribution of luck, but you can't control the cards. So I just focus on what I can
Yeah,
control. And yeah, that's it. That's the
yeah,
game.
you play your hand. I swear we have almost the exact same brain. It's wild to hear somebody talk about things in such a similar way as me. I really enjoyed the chat. Where can the I'm sure it won't be our last one as well. We didn't even get into Bitcoin. We haven't even
Yeah,
gotten
that's
down that
wild
rabbit
because
hole yet.
I think poker and game theory really help with understanding Bitcoin as well and like society's
Yeah,
choice for money. Um, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about it next time. It's been a long time. Yeah,
it's
I'm just AlecTorelli.com or Alec Torelli on X or every social media. So come say hi. I'd love to connect with anyone watching.
cool. Yeah, highly recommend it.
It's funny. I love
Final
your Bitcoin
wisdom.
content too. I think I actually like originally saw a post of yours about Bitcoin, not about poker. Like I might have saw like Bitcoin about you. You might have saw that about me first too. Anyway, it's just wild. We didn't even talk about that. But yeah, we have so much in common.
Yeah, so much more to get into. I can't wait for part two, whenever that is. Much appreciate
Yeah, man.
your presence and your being and your experience shared here today. Until the next one, brother.
You got it, man.
See ya.
Later.